A Japanese researcher walked into a room full of crying babies from around the world. British babies, Canadian babies, Italian babies, all screaming. Then he looked at the Japanese babies in the corner. He ran the study 3 more times. Same room, same conditions, same result, every single time. So he asked the question nobody in decades of infant research had thought to ask. What do Japanese mothers do in the first 90 days that nobody else does? The answer is 2 words. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what they are and how to use them starting tonight. Researchers at the University of Warwick analyzed data from 8,690 infants across multiple countries. They tracked one thing: how much babies cried. The results were published in the Journal of Pediatrics, and they were stunning. British babies cried the most. Canadian babies were a close second. Italian, Dutch, and American babies all ranked high. At the very bottom of the list, crying the least, fussing the least, with the lowest colic rates in the world, Japanese babies. Only 2% of Japanese infants had colic in their first 6 weeks. In Canada, that number was over 34%. Same species, same biology, same basic needs, completely different neurological outcomes. The explanation has nothing to do with genetics, nothing to do with diet, nothing to do with anything you have ever been told. It comes down to 2 Japanese concepts Western parenting abandoned decades ago. And once you understand both, you will never see a crying baby the same way again. The first word is ame, first described by Japanese psychiatrist Tako Doi. It does not translate perfectly into English, which is part of why Western parenting never fully absorbed it. The closest meaning is the deep expectation of being understood without having to ask. Think about what that means for a baby with no language. No way to explain what they need. No mechanism for communicating except distress. In Western parenting, the dominant model is this. Baby cries. Parent responds. The baby learns I have a voice. I can change my world. This is genuinely healthy. It builds self-expression and early self-recognition. But it also means the baby must move through distress every single time they have a need. The gap between need and response runs through discomfort by design. Japanese mothers operate on a completely different model. Their goal is not to respond to distress. Their goal is to prevent it. Japanese mothers spend an average of just 2 hours per week away from their baby in the first year. American mothers spend around 24 hours. Japanese mothers carry their babies constantly in slings. They co-sleep. They anticipate. They watch with a quality of attention most Western parenting culture has no name for. The baby's brain never learns to escalate because escalation was never necessary. The gap between need and response is so consistently small that the nervous system wires itself around a fundamentally different baseline. Calm becomes the default state, not a recovered state. The crying that other babies develop as their primary communication tool, Japanese babies simply never needed to develop to the same degree because they were never left in the gap long enough to need it. The second word is mimamoru, watch and protect. One of the most precise descriptions of a parenting practice developmental science has ever produced. Mimamoru is the Japanese practice of observing your baby so closely and continuously that you begin to read them before they speak, before they cry, before they fuss, before the distress signal has been sent. A mother practicing mimamoru knows the microsignals, the slight shoulder tension that arrives 3 minutes before hunger hits. The subtle change in breathing that signals overstimulation is approaching, the particular stillness that precedes emotional overwhelm. Most Western parents do not see these signals, not because they do not care, because the culture has not taught them to look. Mimamoru says, your baby is always communicating, constant, precise, and completely wordless. Your job is to become fluent in a language with no words. When parents catch the signal before the cry, something profound happens neurologically. The brain does not just feel calmer. It learns something at a cellular level that shapes every relationship this person ever has. The world is predictable. The world is responsive. I am safe. Developmental psychologists call this the neurological foundation of secure attachment, and it is also the neurological foundation of self-regulation, the ability to manage emotions under pressure, to delay gratification, to stay calm when everything around you is not. Skills that show up decades later in classrooms, in workplaces, in marriages, built in the first 90 days by a mother who watched. Here is the most immediately practical finding in this entire video. Scientists at the Riken Brain Science Institute studied exactly what happens when a mother picks up a crying baby. They attached heart rate monitors to crying infants and measured what happened under 4 conditions: holding while seated, rocking in a chair, being pushed in a stroller, and being carried by a walking mother for 5 minutes. When a mother picked up her crying baby and walked, not sat, not rocked, but walked with smooth, continuous forward movement, every single baby stopped crying within 5 minutes. Every one. When a baby is carried by a moving caregiver, a cascade of biological responses triggers simultaneously. Heart rate drops. Muscle tone decreases. Cortisol begins to fall. The baby's nervous system activates what researchers call the transport response, a deeply ancient biological program telling the infant's brain, I am being carried. I am moving. I am with someone. I am safe. 5 minutes of walking. That is the entire intervention. Not equipment, not a sleep training method, not a program. 5 minutes of a mother walking with her baby against her body. Every single baby stopped crying. Because the biology was never complicated. We just stopped listening to it. Japanese parenting is not perfect. And it is not realistic for every family. The co-sleeping, the constant carrying, the 2 hours away per week is genuinely impossible for many parents, for families without support, for parents who must work, for single parents doing everything alone. The data also shows real trade-offs. Japanese children, while exceptional at self-regulation, develop self-recognition and independence slightly later than Western children. Both approaches produce healthy, capable adults. They simply take different neurological paths. This is not an instruction to become Japanese. It is an invitation to take the principles the science supports and apply them in whatever form your life allows. The pre-cry scan. Every morning when you pick up your baby, spend 60 seconds just looking, not feeding, not stimulating, just observing. Learn their baseline. Learn what settled looks like so you can recognize unsettled before it becomes distress. The more fluent you become in your baby's pre-verbal language, the less they need to escalate to be heard. The 5-minute walk. The next time your baby is inconsolable, put everything down. Pick them up. Walk. Smooth steps, forward movement, consistent rhythm. Trust the Riken biology. 5 minutes. The gap reduction. You do not need to be Japanese to reduce the time between your baby's earliest signal and your response. Even 30 seconds earlier, catching the first whisper of need before it becomes a cry, changes the neurological interaction completely. It teaches the baby's brain that the world responds before the escalation. A brain that has learned that lesson does not need to develop escalation as its primary tool. And the Ame question. Instead of asking, how do I respond to my baby, ask, what does my baby need before they tell me? That single shift from reactive to anticipatory is the entire philosophy of Ame distilled into one question. A. Crying baby is not a broken baby. A crying baby is a baby whose gap between need and response has become wide enough to require distress as a signal. The Japanese figured this out long before the research confirmed it. Not through schedules or techniques or programs, through presence, through attention, through the radical, quiet daily act of knowing your baby so completely that they never have to ask twice. 2 words. Ame. Mimamoru. Anticipate. Watch. Respond before the cry. That is the Japanese secret. And it has been waiting in the research for parents who are ready to hear it. If this changed the way you see your baby's first signal before the cry arrives, share it with one parent who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to Wise Roots Parenting, because there is a lot more coming.